What's up guys, welcome to this review of Star Wars The High Republic Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. This time around in the High Republic, war has engulfed Jeddah. Jeddah has fallen to battle and all eyes are now on the path of the open hand. Because of this battle, communications have went down across the galaxy and war has yet again broke out on Erum and Eranu. Once more, the Jedi have to get involved to try and keep the peace and find out what's going on. All eyes shift to Dalna and the Path of the Open Hand, like I just said, in what is a very fun, very enjoyable, very brisk, really good book. I like this book quite a bit, that's my review in short. But this book is different from the first one that came out in this new phase of the High Republic. In the first book of the High Republic Phase 2, things were very focused on Erum and Eranu. The entire book took place on those two planets in that central location. This one is a bit different in that it feels more galaxy expanding. It feels like they're going from place to place to place with lots of different points of views. It's much more reminiscent of the first phase of the High Republic, where there's a lot of viewpoints, a lot of things going on, which they're all interconnected in some way. You don't always know how until it gets towards the back end. The first half of this book is like that. Lots of point of views, lots of different locations. It feels very Star Wars. Then the second half of the book, without going into too many spoilers, focuses on a single location and a single event, and it's very much like the first phase of the High Republic in that regard. Personally, I think that event is elongated too much. I think there's too much going on there and too much repetition, too much dragging things out. But it's still enjoyable, it's still fun, and it does make for a satisfying conclusion, which I think does a good job at setting things up for the future. And I do think we are very clearly heading to the end of this phase now. I don't think there's much story left to tell beyond this book, so I'm very interested in that. But like I said, there's lots of point of views this time around. You are getting the point of views of Enya, you're getting the point of views of the older Jedi, Creighton's son and Char-Il Roy. You're getting the point of views of what's the name of that Jedi, and you're getting the point of views of Ada, and you're getting the point of views of Yoda. Yes, Yoda's in this book. He's a major character in this book. This is the first time for the mainline Star Wars High Republic. That's very interesting. You're getting Yaddle in there as well. There's lots of different point of views, lots of different perspectives, and because it's constantly shifting from one to the other, it does feel like there's a brisk pace into it. It does feel like it's very well thought out, very well edited, for the most part. Like I said, in the second half, things do start to drag out, and it's not because it slows down the point of view shifting, it just feels like it's focusing too much on this one event, and not a lot is actually happening beyond certain action beats. So one of the core themes of this first phase of the High Republic is the Force. Is the Force an entity? Is the Force something that you should use or manipulate? The Jedi feel like the Force flows through everyone. The Force is there to be used, it's there to be manipulated in certain regards. You should embrace it. It can be risky if you don't. The Path of the Open Hand, however, feels like if you manipulate the Force, then there's going to be repercussions somewhere else. And there's a lot of debates about that in this phase of the High Republic, and I think what this book does is it does a really good job at showcasing the beliefs of each group. There are only the two groups it shows, it's worth saying. All the others are on Jeddah still. So I think the themes and the messaging in this book are really powerful. What is right, what is wrong? Is there a right and a wrong? And sadly, because of Star Wars being this expansive galaxy of stories and books and films and TV shows, we kind of know that the Jedi are right. That's our viewpoint. The Jedi are the good guys. The Path of the Open Hand are the bad guys. So naturally we're coming into this with a viewpoint that whatever the Path of the Open Hand believes is wrong. This book does a good job at kind of suggesting, well, maybe it's not. What I do wish is that I wish they would explain why the Path believes what they do. They explain certain elements of it where it's like, right, we see that you don't like this thing, we see that you don't believe this viewpoint, but what made you follow the Path of the Open Hand? Did you witness something? Did you experience something? Did you see the repercussions of the Force? Or has someone just manipulated you? Has someone just brainwashed you into believing that's what happens? That's all a little unclear, and I really wish we could delve into that a bit more. What makes the Path of the Open Hand believe what they believe? That is unknown to me at this point, for the most part. Maybe it's in the comic books, I don't know. But otherwise, the book does do a good job of showcasing these different viewpoints and different themes, and highlighting that, hey, there is something deeper going on beneath the surface. Axel Greylock, the son of one of the Chancellors in the first book, is now imprisoned, and he is, again, one of the main characters this time around. He's got a really good arc in this book. In the first book, he was kind of just popping up here and there. He felt like a bit of comedic relief in certain regards until there was like a twist towards the end, which turned out he was the bad guy. As you know, he's now in prison. So yeah, not really a spoiler, as I've already said it. So Axel Greylock, he goes from being in prison, he goes on a journey to sort of redeem himself, let's say. There's still some question of, will he redeem himself? Does he want to redeem himself? Is he kind of just selfish and going with the flow, trying to survive? That's what his arc is always questioning, and I do think it's a very satisfying arc overall, and he's now probably one of my favourite characters in the High Republic because of this particular book. I liked him in the first book, particularly the twist towards the end. I think that really added a lot to him, and I think they really do a really good job of just expanding on that in this book. So yeah, good job there. And this book is full of surprises, it's full of twists, it's full of shocking moments. There's a moment related to Axel Greylock I won't get into, where you think certain characters are going to do one thing, only they then suddenly pull the rug out from all of us and do something very different. And it really took me by surprise in that regard. And yeah, what I like about this is that it is a book that, because it's so removed from other Star Wars events, books, films, TV shows and so on, we don't really know what happens. We know the end result, we know who will eventually win out, but we don't know how they get there. And because there's loads of new characters here, we don't know what a lot of their fates will be. So it kept me on my toes, this book. There's a lot of surprises in that regard. There's a lot of shocks, there's a lot of upsetting moments, there's a lot of happy moments. It really does a good job of playing with emotions by making you invest in certain characters, making you like certain characters, and then doing things with those characters and having events that come out of nowhere and big shocking moments as well. So good on that. It's a very thrilling book in that regard. So much so is that, well, I do think that this book wraps things up very well. I don't really know where it's going to go in the next one. There are certain story threads that have not been addressed, that have not been resolved or answered by the end of this book. Not too many, which is why I think it's clear that the next one's going to be the final one. But I don't really know where that's going. Obviously we know a certain character, we know who's going to be the main villain, we know that they're going to be taking on that main villain, presumably. But how they go from here to that is a big question for me, and I like that, I like not knowing. But in regards to the Path of the Open Hand, one thing I also want to mention about them is, while it does delve into their viewpoint, this book is surprising and odd in a certain regard, is that the Path of the Open Hand is a cult. In the prior books, it's established that they are a cult living on one planet primarily. They've got little groups all over the place, it seems. But they are huge in this book. Without going into spoilers, there's a lot of them. And apparently they just keep coming and coming. They've got followers all over the place. They've got ardent followers, people who really, really despise the Jedi just for being Jedi and using the Force. But I did not realize the Path of the Open Hand was as big as this book makes them out to be. It seems like they went from being maybe like a couple hundred at most in the first book, or the first books, to now being like thousands almost. And the way in which they jump up is just surprising me. Maybe I've misread it, maybe I've just had a bad interpretation of the Path of the Open Hand, but I was shocked by how big they suddenly were, how many members there were in the Path of the Open Hand. And yeah, that was a little odd. Maybe I've overread something or just not paid attention too well. But to me, the Path of the Open Hand seemed like it was a small cult that was doing more like guerrilla tactics, like subversion and spy stuff behind the scenes. Yet this time around, while they're still doing that, it seems like they've also got like an army's worth of people. And that's just a little odd to me. Again, maybe I've missed something. Tell me in the comments if there's something, a line somewhere which explains how big they were outside of this book. But what I will say about this book as well that I really appreciated is that because it does take things away from Erina and Eiram, the main characters of that book are still here. I think it does a good job at placing the Erina and Eiram stuff in the background while still being very important, and having those characters still be in this book as main characters while still being relevant. It's very clear why they are main characters, why they aren't on Erina and Eiram this much. And I like how the main characters this time around from the first book are much more likable, much more engaging. I feel like they have a lot more chemistry this time around. There's a bit more of a click between them. In the first book, it felt like they were all individuals that were all kind of button heads in certain regards, starting to like each other. Now, they do like each other, and they're trying to team up and do things together. So it does feel much more of like a friendly group of faces, and they're much more engaging, much more likable. I feel like we learned a bit more about some of them as well. And I appreciated that the Eiram and Erina thing wasn't the main focus this time around, because we got a lot of that in the first book, and it seemed to resolve itself. We don't need to repeat it here, although they are kind of doing that, just not pushing it as the main focus. The Mother. So the Mother is the primary antagonist, sort of. There's another antagonist I'm not going to talk about who kind of takes that main villain role towards the back end of the book for various reasons I won't get into. But the Mother is the main antagonist of this phase of the High Republic. She's a fascinating, intriguing, mysterious character. She's got a certain presence whenever she appears in the book. The book does a really good job at explaining the sort of effect she has on people, how she is a sort of intimidating yet calming individual at the same time. There's a lot of these clashes going on, and one of the things I don't like is that there's a lot of teasing going on with the Mother. They're teasing what the Mother's plans are, what the Mother wants to do, what her intentions are, but it's all very vague. Lots of teasers, no answers. I feel like we're at the point now where we need to start getting answers. And they're probably going to do that in the next book, I imagine, or maybe in the young adult book, which I've just started reading. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff about the Mother which I find fascinating and intriguing, but the books I've read so far don't seem to be answering any of that stuff. And in relation to that and the Path of the Open Hand, there's again a thing of, well, what makes her believe this? Has she experienced something? Has she seen something? Has she been through something that explains why she believes this viewpoint about the Force, about the Jedi? It's unclear. And that's my review of Star Wars The High Republic Cataclysm. Hard word to say. And it's a very good book. I enjoyed it a lot. I do think the back end of the book could have been trimmed down a bit. Some things could have been cut out. There are a lot of point of views this time around. There's a lot of perspectives, which makes it feel very brisk, very fast, very entertaining read. It feels much more like the first phase of the High Republic in that regard, rather than the last book of this phase. And it does a good job of building off what came before and setting things up for what's to come. It's very fun, very exciting. I like the characters. There's lots of twists, lots of turns, lots of thrills. There's some cool moments, there's some surprises. It's got a bit of everything, really. And yeah, I think this is one of the best books in the High Republic thus far. Definitely a step up from the last one in certain regards. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and of course follow me on Twitter and Instagram at _GrabBurton. Until next time though, thanks for watching.